Welcome to r/JustNoHOA, where people tell stories about their crazy homeowner associations. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. How my mom shamed the HOA into disbanding. My mom lives in a nice, newer home community with a voluntary HOA. My mother, being the firecracker she is, refused to formally join the HOA, but agreed to do the things she would do anyway to upkeep her home. We paint for her, she has a gardener, wash windows, etc. She never signed any documents, does not pay fees, but told the board she would adhere to the standards she did not find silly. The volunteer president lives next to my mother, and this guy has never liked our family. Since mom did not join, he would knock on her door for friendly visits to tell her what rules she was violating. It was all very silly and we continued to ignore him. His biggest pet peeve was her trash cans. They stayed out too long after trash pickup and said it was an eyesore for the rest of the neighborhood. Now I have to explain a few things about my mom. Mom is a double amputee, has a dysfunctional side from stroke, is wheelchair bound and is still about 95% independent. There is a few things she cannot do, and bringing the trash cans in and out of the side gate is one of them. For that chore, my sister or myself come over the night before trash day and put them out, and the following evening to put them back in. He complained and wrote letters and called the city about her trash cans. This guy knew my mom is in a wheelchair, but he kept harassing her. It was after a winter storm that the trash can blew over and sprayed the neighborhood with trash overnight. It was not just her can, by the way, it was several. My sister and I walked the neighborhood and picked up the trash as soon as we could. Well, the president lost his mind. He gathered up the other members of the board next trash day and stormed up to her house. He yelled at her through the screen door while the other sycophants nodded their heads. I happened to be there and was preparing to grab a broom and sweep the trash, yelling at my mom off our porch. But to my mother's credit, she did not yell back, she simply opened the door and rolled her wheelchair down the drive. And then my tiny mother struggled to pull the trash can back up the driveway with her one good arm. It was actually pretty sad. Mom hammed it up. She has adapted to her weak side, but you would not know it from watching her that day. By the time she got the can halfway up the drive, the angry mob was glaring daggers at the president. I would find out later he never told them she was disabled and painted her as lazy, and most of the meetings were the president complaining about my mom and telling lies about what a nightmare it was living next to her. After a round of muttered apologies, they scattered like roaches in the light. Once they left, I moved the trash cans in and we had a good laugh. The volunteer HOA died very soon after that. Apparently no one wanted to attend meetings that were little more than glorified complaining sessions about my mom and other people in the neighborhood. The president had been harassing other homeowners and telling similar lies about them. He was proven a liar and we almost never see him now. I would say the neighborhood has gotten better at this point. This guy turned out to be the cause of all the strife, and without his influence people began to actually talk to each other. Nowadays, people stop by to check on mom during storms, and sometimes her trash cans will magically appear in the side yard on windy days. And mom, in perfect fashion, sent out Christmas cards to all her neighbors. You may have seen this card in the stores, but it has a raccoon on it and says, "Merry Trashmas." Honestly, in my opinion, that mom is definitely a hero. Nonetheless, this once again shows that people just love to follow the lies other people tell without even thinking or doing any research on their own. But anyway guys, enough hive mind talk. Do you have any annoying neighbors that love to talk behind your back? Let us know in the comments. Homeowners Association board member causes a crappy Christmas. Our lovely HOA has decided that should you choose to decorate your exterior for the winter holiday season, your lighting may not have 2 consecutive bulbs that are the same color, unless all of your lights are the same color. Last year, I hung my usual blue lighting and intentionally swapped in 1 red bulb just to piss off our HOA CC&R enforcement officer. It took 2 days before I had a friendly phone call, another 3 days until I received a certified letter, and an additional 5 days until a $50 violation fine showed up. The holidays passed and I continued to fight the fine. I refused to pay it, late fees started to build, and eventually I was summoned to an association meeting. I compiled a list of some of the most insane HOA regulations I could find to compare to the insanity I was dealing with. I admitted that I changed the bulb intentionally and pled with the HOA board to have a little reason. It turns out that while a majority vote was needed to pass a new regulation, an unanimous vote is needed to change or repeal a regulation. All of the HOA board members, with the exception of one, who just so happened to be the old woman who cited me for the violation to begin with, agreed that the rule was unnecessary. This old hag proceeded to argue that even though she did not live on my street, my lighting had ruined her Christmas and presumably the Christmas of everyone on my street. Finally, someone on the board pointed out that while they needed an unanimous vote to change the regulation, they only needed a majority vote to remove another member of the board. An immediate vote was taken and the lighting Nazi was removed from the board. A motion was made to re-vote on my case and it was immediately dismissed. Honestly, at this point I'm really wondering what is the real purpose of HOAs. I mean, 2 days ago we had an HOA that complained about the grass being too long, and now we have an HOA that dislikes the Christmas lighting. HOA seems to be the perfect way for busybody people to harass and bully others. But anyway, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and also like the video if you want to support me. Thank you so much, all the help is very much appreciated. $20 million verdict against HOA, owners now liable for $88,000 each. Teenager was injured by playground equipment, HOA was sued and lost because they knew the equipment was defective, did not follow the manufacturer's maintenance plan and did not do their own maintenance. The HOA is currently appealing the verdict. Insurance only covers $2 million, leaving $18 million. There are 205 homes total. This is in Las Vegas, Nevada. My girlfriend owns a home in this community and we are trying to assess her options. Is it a foregone conclusion that the HOA will have to come up with this money and hit the homeowners with an assessment? With the HOA found liable, can the HOA hold the property management company responsible? Is there anything she and the other homeowners can do about this mess? And since this was posted on r/legal advice, there was one person who gave some very good advice saying, I would suggest your girlfriend to talk to a lawyer and her homeowner's insurance. Hopefully she has an umbrella policy that will cover this. The HOA members can split the cost of a lawyer. Don't talk to the lawyer representing the HOA, his interests may be different than the interests of the property owners. And I gotta say, the interesting thing here is, I did not even know that homeowners can be held accountable for something like this. I would have guessed that this mess was entirely up to the HOA to fix. I suppose yet another reason to not become a homeowner. Self-metering flower pot defeats HOA. When I was in high school back in the late 90s, one of my teachers shared a story with the class in order to explain why we would have a substitute teacher in the next week. This is by far my favorite story in the vein of malicious compliance. My teacher was in his late 30s, married for only a couple of years, and over the summer he and his wife bought their first house together. As is typical, the house was in a development that had an HOA. While he was not thrilled at the idea of a meddling HOA, it is a necessary and unavoidable evil. He went through their CC&Rs with a fine-tooth comb and decided while there was some stuff he was not a fan of, overall he could live with it, so they signed the papers and bought the house. About a week after they move in, they get a non-compliance letter stating that the tree in their front yard was not an approved species and must be removed. The problem is the tree was native to that spot and was estimated at 80 to 100 years old and was a pecan. I mention the type for two reasons. First, a pecan produces nuts, obviously, and that is why the HOA said it cannot be in the front yard. After all, a lawnmower flings a rogue pecan through a neighbor's window and there will be an issue. The second issue is that this was in the Dallas, Texas area. The pecan is the state tree of Texas and as such gets a little legal protection. Basically, to cut one down, you need to have a permit. To get that permit, you have to show the tree is deceased or a hazard. Just being in the way is not sufficient. My teacher is upset as the tree is large, provides lots of shade, and he likes eating pecans. He writes back to the HOA, who turn a deaf ear and point to the CCR and refer him to their legal team for any further questions. He then contacts the county and state, who both come back with he cannot remove the tree without a permit or he will face a large fine and/or jail. He copies that letter and sends it along with his own letter in a certified envelope to the HOA lawyers. The lawyers come back that the CCR is binding, he's not allowed to have fruit or nut producing trees in his front yard, but ornamental trees of flowers and flower pots, this part is important, are fine. If it is not removed in 30 days, they will begin fining him. At this point he gets his own lawyer and turns it over to him. A couple of months go by and we are to the part of this story where he is explaining why there will be a substitute. He will be going to court to have a judge weigh in on the matter. The next week comes and after the court hearing he comes in and says that basically he lost as the judge ruled the CCR did apply and the tree had to go. However, since it was a native tree at the time of development, the HOA would be responsible for all costs of removal, not him as the homeowner. Now, most people probably would have let it go at this point. Sure, you lost the tree, but it is not costing you anything. Not my teacher, the man decided it was time to protest the overreaching HOA and their absurdity. So he got to reading. After going through the CCRs thoroughly, he took a trip to Home Depot and bought some hose, fittings and a nicer, Kohler toilet. He set the toilet up in the middle of the yard, right where the tree had been, and ran the hose and fittings to his outside faucet so that it was hooked up for water in, not hooked to a sewer, this is the front yard after all. He then dumped some potting soil in the bowl and planted some decorative flowers. It took a few weeks, but the non-compliance letter came in stating he had house waste in his front yard and it must be removed within 72 hours or he would be fined. He wrote back there was no house waste. They responded again and he stated they needed to come show him where this supposed waste was. The next day, an HOA guy comes out and points right at the toilet and says it cannot be there, it is an eyesore. My teacher responded, sorry you feel that way about my self-watering flower pot, but I see nowhere in the CCRs that state what style of flower pot is or is not allowed. HOA guy gets verbally heated and threatens to call the cops, to which my teacher agrees. Having his bluff called, the HOA guy leaves. A week or so goes by and the class I am in is pestering our teacher every day for new stories on this. He said he got a letter from their lawyer which he sent straight to his lawyer. His lawyer agreed with him that the CCR in no way, shape or form puts any qualifiers or limitations on flower pots, and as the flowers are clearly visible, it does not constitute debris or trash in the yard. A few back and forth things happen between the lawyers and then the HOA moves for a trial, which gets the same judge as before. The judge reviewed the case and dismissed it as frivolous. He did put in his remarks or decision something along the lines of, while the defendant's choice of a flower pot is eye-raising and is not traditional, there is nothing illegal about his use of a commode as art in his yard. The plaintiff has failed to demonstrate any sound reason this would violate existing rules and bylaws of their association. You know, this story kind of reminds me of the old stories that my parents told me about the past when they grew up, when they had toilets not in the house but instead in the yard. Did any of my viewers grow up in a time where this was common? Let us know in the comments. I will fly my flag when I want to, HOA. So a while back I was given a UGA Bulldogs flag and a flagpole to mount it on my porch. Our HOA restrictions say that sports team flags can only be flown on a day in which the team is playing. My intention was to only fly it on Saturdays when the football team was playing. So I put the flag up on a Saturday, the dogs were playing but forgot to take it down until Monday. On Friday I get a letter from the HOA stating that I am in violation of the restriction and could be fined. Okay, fair enough, they are correct on this one. I then noticed that the date of observation was on Wednesday. I called and said that could not be true because I took it down on Monday. Instead of admitting her mistake, she lied and said that she had seen it up on Wednesday, but now I was mad. I printed off a schedule of every sporting event the Bulldogs had in every sport, even club sports, and then proceeded to fly the flag every single day there was any kind of game, match, regatta, etc., which was almost every single day. I then started getting letters stating I was in violation again. I would call on each one and explain that the water polo team had a match or the rowing team had a regatta on those days. After about a month or two of this back and forth, they finally gave up. As I mentioned in the previous videos, these HOAs really remind me of either Nazi Germany or Eastern Germany after the war, where pretty much some busybody, either government or authority, wants to control every part of your life. I really would not be surprised if they also would like to control our bathroom schedule. And the next one is gonna be from our own subreddit and was posted by Stacy Rose. It is titled, "Woman Tries to Steal Donated Toy That a Little Girl Bought." This happened just this week and I'm still amazed how entitled some people are. You know how stores put out those Toys for Tots bins for people to purchase toys and put in them for kids for Christmas? Well, this story is about one of those bins and what a lot of witnesses saw happened, and one little girl who was not gonna let this entitled person get away with what she did, and a Walmart greeter who is a tough old guy. By the way, I forgot to mention, obviously this story is not concerned with r/JustNoHOA, but instead fits the entitled people category. Anyway, so this happened as I said this past week. When you check out and leave the store, there are these bins set up not far from the door greeters at Walmart, where people donate toys for needy kids. I was behind this mother, father and a little girl that had to be about 10 or so. The little girl put a Lego set in one of those bins. She was beaming with pride. I heard her father say, "Good job, honey," to her. Then out of nowhere, this entitled woman walked up to the bin and took the Lego set out and started walking out of the store with it along with the rest of her stuff she already paid for. This little girl saw it and screamed, "Hey thief, put that back!" and ran up to that entitled woman and grabbed the Lego set out of her cart and put it back in the Toys for Tots bin. The lady looked at her and said, "I'm not the thief, you are. How dare you take my son's Christmas present?" and shoved the little girl aside right in front of her parents and all of us that witnessed it, and went back to the bin and took the Lego set out. Now, a lot of us, including the parents, were starting to get pissed off. The mother said, "Did you just push my child?" The entitled woman had the nerve to say, "Teach your child some manners," and started to walk off again with the stolen toy and her paid stuff. The little girl started crying and yelled, "I paid for that and donated it for a needy kid, not you." And the lady looked at her and said, "Kids cannot buy things, stop lying you stupid brat." The mother was hugging her crying daughter and looked at the woman and said, "What the hell is wrong with you?" The father had ran to the service desk to get the manager at this time. He was so pissed you could tell he wanted to knock this lady out cold. The entitled woman continued to walk towards the door, but was stopped by the door greeter. He stood in front of her cart and said, "Get out of my way, you old fart," and tried to shove past him. This door greeter is an older gentleman. I would say he was well past his 60s and is normally a very gentle soul. He refused to budge and held onto this woman's cart tightly while she kept trying to shove past him. He got on his radio and within minutes security was there. The family, myself, other witnesses all stayed to see what would happen. The little girl went up to the security and told them she bought the Lego set that was in the woman's cart and donated it for the needy kids who don't get a good Christmas, and then she said, "If you check that mean lady's receipt, you will see she did not pay for it. But I have my receipt right here and I can show you the cashier man who helped me count out my coins." The entitled woman then huffed and said, "Kids are not allowed to buy toys. She's lying, stupid little brat." But the security were having none of her attitude. The bigger security guy told her, "Ma'am, we have it all on our CCTV footage, along with all these witnesses that saw it all. Are you seriously gonna try to lie your way out of this and call a little girl names? Very adult of you." Some of us giggled at that statement, me included in the bunch. This entitled woman then says, "My baby needs his toy." Then someone that witnessed it said, "Then go back and buy him one and not steal from charity, lady." She looked over at the lot of us and said, "Mind your own business." I laughed at this and said, It is our business when you have the balls to steal from a little girl who was doing something kind for those in need. She just glared at me. The door greeter still did not let go of her card and said, "Ma'am, let me see your receipt." And she refused. The security told her to give him her receipt or they will be taking this in the security office. She relented and handed him her receipt, and surprise surprise, the Lego set was not on the receipt. Security took the Lego set out and handed it back to the little girl. She smiled at him and then skipped over to the bin and put it back in. The entitled woman started to say something, but the father cut her off and said, "One word and I will knock your teeth out." So she shut up. During this time, the manager had already gotten statements from all of us eyewitnesses and then told security that he was gonna be banning this woman from the store. The entitled woman did not like this and said, "I spend a lot of money in here, how dare you?" To which the manager said, "I dare," with a smug smile on his face. The little girl then said, "If you have a lot of money, you should not be stealing," and stuck out her tongue at the lady, to which a lot of us giggled again. The woman was about to say something again, but the father said, "One word," in an authoritative tone and glared at her. I gave the girl a high five and said, "Good job," and she smiled big. Some of us had put some toys in those bins too, and it upset us that someone would be so entitled to steal from kids in need. The door greeter gave the girl a candy cane and told her to have the best Christmas ever. He said she's an angel living on Earth, and the little girl beamed with pride. The parents thanked all of us for sticking around and helping, and all of us told them it was not a problem. One guy said, "It's not your fault, some people are cringes," and chuckled. The entitled woman was escorted into the security office with the security and the manager by this time. We were all finally able to leave the store. Some stayed behind to make sure nothing else happened or to chat with the door greeter. Some told the door greeter he did a great job, and some complimented the family for having such a wonderful little girl. Most of us were shocked that all of this happened in under 20 minutes. It happened fast but seemed to take hours. I seriously don't understand why people who have the means to support themselves and their families have to steal. And why steal from a kid? It makes me sick that so many people are so greedy. I recently saw something on the news that in another state someone broke into the Salvation Army and stole almost all of the donated toys for children for Christmas. How can someone ruin a child's Christmas like this? This is a messed up world we live in. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season and never have to deal with entitled people or greedy people. Have a wonderful new year too. Thank you very much, Stacy, for posting that story, and indeed, I'm also unable to wrap my head around the fact that people actually steal from charities, especially when it comes to charities that affect children. On a side note, do you guys ever donate your money? In our family, it's a bit of a tradition to do donations around Christmas for UNICEF, or whatever it is pronounced in English, but either way, that is really a tradition I would like to keep up. But either way, let's continue to the last story that was sent to me on Twitter. This story was sent by Lord Relentless on Twitter, thank you very much for the story by the way, and he said it is a story of how a Christmas turned into attempted murder. Back when I was 4 years old, this is around 1990, my mom had married a guy we will name Jackass, JK. We, my mom and then JK, lived in Hutchinson, Kansas, while JK's parents lived in West Fargo, North Dakota. We decided to drive up to West Fargo to spend the Christmas with JK's parents. The holiday was alright. JK's parents did not know what to get me for the holiday, and so I ended up getting a tub of caramel popcorn and a random toy. At the time, JK's mother ran a daycare, and so about midday, about 30 kids were in the house running amok, and one of the older kids had hit me and stole the toy I had received for Christmas. This started a dispute between me and said kid, and this triggered an argument between my mom, JK, and JK's mother. The verbal altercation continued off on and on throughout Christmas Day, prompting JK and my mom to leave that night back to Kansas, into the night of hell. We are about an hour south of Fargo ND, on a back road around 1 AM in the morning. I'm sleeping in the back of the Mercury Tracer we owned at the time. John Bon Jovi played on the radio, loudly covering up my mom and JK's argument. At some point, I don't recall exactly as I was half asleep, sprawled out across the backseat, JK pulled the car over. Before I knew it, I was dragged out of the backseat without my coat on. Snow pelted my face and my mom and I tumbled down an embankment into a ditch. JK pulled out a knife club, police tonfa, and started to beat us. He hit me and then my mother, who shielded me with her body. After what seemed like forever, but was probably only a few minutes of this, he got back into the car and took off, leaving us there. In the middle of a snowstorm, falling temperatures, without coats, and my mom stood on the side of the road and waved down the one driver passing us by at that time. A pizza delivery guy. He drove us back to Fargo and to JK's mother's house. JK's mother, despite the multitude of bruises, broken skin, my mom having a busted rib and smashed glasses, refused to believe her precious little boy could do this to us and we must have been attacked by a carjacker or something. It would not be until a year later, when we had moved from Kansas up to a small township called Sheldon, North Dakota, where JK later attempted to kill us again by drunkenly shooting at us with a gun he had stolen, that his mother would finally realize the utter a-hole she had raised. But that story is for a different time. Jesus Christ, that JK guy definitely sounds like a lunatic. I also know some people in my life that can get so insanely aggressive when they have an argument with someone. Honestly, sometimes it can get really scary. I suppose some people just cannot control themselves, and if you push their right button, so to say, they are even willing to kill. But anyway guys, I'm sorry that this episode ended on sort of a negative note. But I still hope that you enjoyed the stories today, and if you did, please don't forget to like the video and give me some ripe stars. Thank you so much. So I hope you have a fantastic day and I see you again tomorrow.